going on, everyone? Greg here with RC Driver, and this is the Redcat Racing Gen 8 pack kit. And this is perfect for those people that want to build something up on their own, and those who really want the best value out of the kit they're going to buy, and those who want something really capable off-road for scale and trail use. And this kit is just right up my alley because I actually have a bunch of electronics and a body, wheels, and tires that I have left over from a project that just didn't come together. So I've got all this stuff, and now it's perfect because I have this chassis kit to review, and it's all going to go in here. I'll show you that stuff in a little bit, but first let's talk about the P.A.C.K kit here. And P.A.C.K stands for Pre-Assembled Chassis Kit, and that's basically what you get here. You got a chassis kit that you put all of your stuff in. So let me show you everything that it comes with, starting with the instruction manual. There's not a lot of information in here as far as installing your electronics. Kind of just gives you a bunch of setup tips and stuff like that. So if you're getting into the hobby, maybe if this is your first vehicle, I think you should have a little bit of experience, at least know what you're doing ahead of time before getting this kit. But if you do have some experience, I'm sure you'll be able to figure out how to drop everything in that you're going to need to, install. And then we've got this little bag of parts here. And let's start off by showing you guys the bumpers. So, we've got the front bumper that we saw on the Gen 8 Scout. Same with the rear bumper. It's got the trailer hitch in there, Redcat logo and everything. And it's got the 9mm posts on the bumper, which is great because, it just adds a lot more strength to the bumper. And for those of you that may want to put on an optional bumper that has the smaller posts on there, there's actually these inserts that come with it, and it takes up the space in the mounts. So you could go and install aftermarket bumpers. I didn't know that when I was reviewing the Scout, but I figured it out now. Pretty neat that it comes with that stuff. All right, also in here is your Velcro battery straps. Obviously going to need that to secure your battery. And then we've got this bag of hardware. What really just stands out here is the aluminum wheel hexes that come with it. Yes, 12mm aluminum wheel hexes and an aluminum servo arm. Very cool. We saw that on the Gen 8 Scout as well. And then we got the rest of the hardware you're going to need to install it. We got screws for the body mounts, the wheel nuts, cross pins, and such. So those are the basics of what you're going to need to finish it off. And then we've got the servo lead extensions. 2 of those come with the kit. And then finally in here, we've got a bunch of body mounts. So here are all the body mounts here. We got 2 short ones for the front, 2 long ones for the rear, and even a cross brace for the rear to keep the rear of the body stable. So besides the chassis kit, that's everything else that comes with it. There's nothing else in there. It comes nicely bubble wrapped so it doesn't get knocked around in shipping. And then, of course, we have the pre-assembled chassis here. And let me just go over some of the features that make the Gen 8 really great. It's really capable. It comes with portal axles, and people are just loving it for the ground clearance. And what's really nice about this Gen 8 is up front it has CV universals up here. And as you would expect, the gears on the inside are also metal. It has a CNC aluminum locker in the center. And even this front diff cover plate is metal. And that same goes for the rear. Metal gears, metal plate, all ball bearings throughout. I think it's like 32 rubber seal ball bearings in this kit. And that's what scale off-roaders want. They want the rubber seal bearings. So very cool that that's in here. In the center here is the transmission. It actually has a divorce transfer case over here. So we've got a short shaft going from the transmission over to the transfer case. And what that allows is the motor can now be mounted up front, so you get more weight over the front wheels. And inside the gearboxes are all Mod 1 gears. I think that's pretty neat. Just a very large tooth in there to withstand the stresses that this vehicle is going to go through out there on the trail. Rounding out the rest of the drivetrain, we've got slider shafts in the center with metal universals on the ends of those shafts. So it's got a stout drivetrain on there. Now I have seen online people, are pulling their portals apart and seeing if what type of grease is in there and stuff. And some people have like little to no grease. Some people have plenty of grease in there. I did pull these off. These had a decent amount of grease in there. And for me, I just run a light coating of grease on mine. So that works for my particular use. All right. Now with that said, let's go on to the chassis because the chassis is killer on this. A 1.5mm thick steel. Stamped C-channel chassis, ladder frame type setup. We've got the cross braces here. We've got the low CG battery mount in the center, and just a really rigid platform. not a lot of flex in there at all. And what's really neat about the setup on this, and I'll get to the suspension in a bit, but you could actually go and adjust the wheelbase on this. So there's holes in the chassis that allow you to extend the wheelbase without getting extra parts. And now I should probably just get into the suspension since I'm talking about it. Check this out, guys. All metal links on here, which is so cool. There's a lot of plastic link trucks out there. Not happening here. Redcat went right for the metal links. They know what you guys want. We got metal links up front. We got a metal link for the panhard bar. So that's a really nice option to have, right off the bat. And then on all four corners here, we've got aluminum shocks, oil-filled aluminum shocks, threaded bodies on here. They got a pretty large bore to it as well, pretty thick shock shaft, and they got a pretty good feel to them. The shock towers on here, composite plastic. We've got running boards, so this is where your electronics mount. Here's your receiver box over here. And overall, it's just a really nice setup. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and add a link to our Gen 8 Scout review so you can find out all the details when you have some extra time. So now, let me show you all the stuff I'm going to put in this kit. Alright, so here's my collection of gear that is going to go into the pack, and let me start off with the... Well, I went and recorded this entire segment of what I was going to use to finish off this Redcat Racing Gen 8 pack kit, and you know what? As I started working on the rig, my plans totally changed, and so you know what? I'm going to record a whole new one here and just show you guys what I did to finish off this kit. Now, what's cool about this kit is you get to put on all the finishing touches, you get to select everything you want, and I had a Jeep body planned to go on this truck, and that didn't really work out. Well, the frame on this truck is pretty long, and I think it's really set up for the Scout, but when it comes to fitting an aftermarket body to it, you really have to watch your selection on it. And so I had a Proline Jeep Rubicon, and the front of the frame was sticking out of the front, and then the rear was sticking out a little bit, and I'm like, I just can't make this work right. It just didn't look right to me. So I kind of started going through some of my old stuff, and I came across this body right here. It's actually a discontinued body, and I don't like using discontinued stuff because I like to show you guys stuff that you can pick up on the hobby shop shelves. But this is a Proline Silverado that I had painted a while back for a honcho project that never came about. And actually, this is a VG Racing roll cage for a trail honcho. And so I had this stuff just sitting there. It was on my shelf, and I brought it over to the truck, and I'm like, wow, that fits perfectly. This is what I need to use on here. So that is kind of how I started off things after that Rubicon body didn't work out. I did have to do a couple modifications to the cage. I had to relocate the rear mount. This is actually mounted to the frame with 2 screws, and it hinges up. I just pop it up so I could show you guys. But that's something VG made for a trail honcho, and I don't believe they make that anymore either. But it looks so good on this truck that I just had to go ahead and use it. And hopefully it inspires someone to be creative, find something cool out there, and make your own unique build. So that's really it with the body. On all 4 corners, what I did is I went with Proline Impulse wheels and the BF Goodrich Crawler KX tires. Really nice tires, vented the tires, and they look great on the truck, and I think they're going to perform really well. I heard lots of good things about these tires. I haven't tried them yet myself, so I'm interested to see how they work on the trail. But that's really it for the exterior details, stuff that I had to finish up. Maybe just slide this back. And now onto the electronic stuff, which is all stuff I had to supply. I went all Holmes hobbies basically in here. So starting up front, I have a Holmes Hobby brushless servo up front, and I'm not sure if he's going to continue making these. He kind of was on the fence when I was talking to him. But definitely check out the Holmes Hobbies website. It has lots of cool products on there. So that is going to give me a lot of muscle in the steering department here. And then right behind there is a Holmes Hobbies BL Pro Puller motor. And that I know is going to provide plenty of torque and nice smooth throttle for this thing. That's what Holmes Hobbies does. They create, really precise electronics, especially for crawlers. And then, of course, because I'm all Holmes Hobby out here, had to go with a Holmes Hobbies BLE speed controller, again, to mate up with the motor. That's just going to perform ultra smooth, ultra reliable. That's what Holmes Hobbies equipment is all about. And then over here, I have a Max Amps Shorty Pack to power the thing. And the reason why I went with a Shorty Pack was because of the cab, actually. So the full-length battery pack kind of stuck out behind the body. didn't want to hog out the back of the body, I didn't want to rework the rear of the cage. So I actually cut off the back of the tray, just put a post right in the back to support the battery, prevent it from sliding out back just in case something happens. But now it's nice and secure. It's a shorty pack. We're starting to see shorty packs being used in crawlers. So, I put that there, 2 straps to secure it just fine. The other thing I did because of the size of the cab is I cut off the rear of the floor pans here, and they fit nicely into the back of the cab of the body, and everything looks pretty cool. And then finally over here in the receiver box, I do have a Spectrum receiver because I'm going to use my rugged radio in this. And beyond the receiver, I did go and put a Castle Creations BEC in there, the BEC 2.0, just to make sure everything is getting powered properly. And then beyond that, I just want to tell you guys that you are going to need a couple of additional things. I did need some screws. It was for the servo, if I remember correctly. I don't think it had the correct screws or the long enough screws to really mount that. And I know a lot of servos actually come with screws, so maybe that won't be a problem for some. The other thing is it didn't come with a pinion gear. And so I had to go searching through my stuff, wound up putting a Robinson Racing 11-tooth pinion gear on there. We'll see how that works. It should be just fine. And no body clips. No body clips in the kit, so you're going to have to provide that as well. But other than that, if you're into the hobby, if you're picking up a P.A.C.K kit, most likely you have experience. And if you have experience, you probably have a lot of that stuff on hand, as I did. Just went rummaging through all my parts to find all that stuff. But that's really it. The P.A.C.K kit looks very cool. I think this body looks really good on here, even though it's not available anymore. But I'm sure you can find something else that's similar to it. Now it just leaves going out and having some fun with it. So I'm going to go out and find some rocks to crawl over and just hang out on some new trails. All right, so it's time to wrap up this review of the Gen 8 pack kit, and you know what? I kind of like this a little bit more than the Ready to Run. Ready to Run was very cool out of the box for its intended buyer. It's a great truck, but here with the pack kit, you get to build it up the way you want to, and because I was able to put in the electronics that I wanted, put on the body, the wheels and tires that I wanted, I just had a much more enjoyable experience, and I think I got to know the chassis itself a little bit better. So as you saw in the action portion of it, I took it over to one of my usual test locations, a dirt lot, where there's a lot of bumps and jumps and rocks and stuff like that, and it was a lot of fun to just kind of bomb through those elements and just watch the tires turn up the dirt, kind of just bounce around through the rocks and stuff like that, and because of the great ground clearance with these portal axles, you know, it was able to get through a lot of that stuff without issue. And that just means you have a great time driving when things aren't getting hung up all the time, but it is a very capable platform. I took it over to one of my other test locations, which is much more of a rock crawling, climbing type of terrain, and this truck actually did pretty well there too. Even though it just rained, there was a little bit of tire spin, but again, you know, it just crawls up a lot of the stuff because of the portals. There's a lot more ground clearance, and it steers fairly well. Now, one thing I do want to mention is the Redcat portals. It's known for, if you overextend the steering, you could possibly break the gear cups that the dog bone goes into. So I did have mine limited a little bit, and because I was a little cautious there, the steering radius was a little bit wider than I would have liked, but still, this thing gets through a lot of the challenges that you put it through. You know, the suspension on here is pretty awesome, and I have to say, with the you know, truggy cage on the back, with the rear end wide open, you could really see the suspension work on there. You could see the axle twist and everything, and I think it was pretty cool. Now, this cage was a little bit heavy for this truck, and so it tipped over when I tried to push it. You know, probably if I had a plastic cage on there, something a bit lighter, maybe like a Proline cage, you know, I think I could have pushed it a lot more, but this, you know, full steel cage basically in the back here did add a lot of weight to it. But again, you know, the cool factor was there for me, watching, you know, the suspension articulate and really watching this thing work. You know, I really enjoyed putting my electronics into it. I think it was way better. On the downside, because this is a kit and you get to build it up, I think, you know, the person buying this is a little bit higher level of a crawler. Because of that, I'm going to go and kind of ding Redcat for the steering on here, the bump steer. This particular kit did have a little bump steer, and I went and actually fixed that before I went rock crawling with it, and changed out the servo horn on here, added a little spacer in the arm, so the servo horn would point straight out. And so, you know, it was an easy fix. And I think I saw somewhere that Redcat may have fixed that on the newer kits, but, you know, I'm reviewing this kit right here, and so I did have to go and tweak that. The other thing on this is the lower skid plate. On the Ready to Run, you know what, it's just fine because it's a Ready to Run, you know, out of the box, it does just fine for the intended user of the truck. But this, on the other hand, again, you know, I think people are building this up to push it a bit more, and so having a flat plate on the bottom of this probably would have been better, a flat skid plate. And I think, you know, maybe they could have made that change, but there's definitely some options out there for those of you that want to change it out and, you know, get rid of that bump. But those are just, you know, two little minor things. No breakage issues. You know, I didn't break those cups on this. Again, I watched my steering endpoints. I suggest you do the same when you build it. And you know, I had no problems with the axle. I've seen some people breaking axles, you know, in some groups out there, and you know, they tell you later on down the road, oh yeah, it fell 20 feet down a cliff. You know, well, you know, if you're going to push it that hard, things can happen. So I didn't have any problems with this. Again, everything was well greased in the drivetrain, and it was just a fun build overall. Again, you get to build this up the way you want to with the tires and the electronics you want, and I think because of that, you can enjoy this truck even more.